Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today in Titletown Packers podcast. My name is Griffin. I'm your host. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at AllDayPackers, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, as always, Bron and Mason. Bron, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. You can follow me on Instagram at Lambo Leapers.
And Mason, how are you?
Great, brother. You guys can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Packer Posts.
And today on the podcast, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the 2020 NFL Draft taking place in just a couple of weeks here. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on the wide receiver position. And as I'm sure you all know, it is a very loaded class this season. There are a lot of guys who are going to go on in rounds 2 and 3 who could have gone in the first round in other years. And as I'm sure you also know, the Packers really need a wide receiver because right now the receiver room is pretty much Devontae Adams and a lot of question marks. So it's a good year to need a receiver. And
Yeah, and we're going to be taking a look at some of your guys' questions about the class and the Packers' needs specifically. And at their current pick 30, they have a lot of options. They could trade up, they could stay put, or they could trade down. So we're going to be looking at all those different options and all the prospects that could be available in those different spots.
And unfortunately, this year, unlike last year, we're picking at 30 instead of 12. So we are going to miss out on, a bunch of the higher wide receiver prospects. Like, you probably heard of CD Lamb, Jerry Judy. So unfortunately, we're probably going to be looking at some other guys like our fourth ranked, fifth ranked, sixth ranked guys. So yeah, this wide receiver class is just loaded. I guarantee if, the sixth ranked or fifth ranked guy in this class, if he were to go to last year's class, he probably would have, been in the first round, like been one of the first two wide receivers off the board. So this wide receiver class is just loaded. And, the Packers are fortunate. I think there's a bunch of very good options in play at pick 30.
yeah, we've kind of been spoiled in the 2018 and 2019 drafts with our really high picks. In 2018, we were in the mid teens. Last year, we were at 12. And for the first time in like a lot of years for Packer fans, we were looking at the cream of the crop of the rookie talent, and now it's back to where we're kind of used to being pick number 30, the low end first rounders. But yeah, we're gonna get right into it. We got some fan questions actually that you guys submitted. So, Bron.
So the first question we're going to discuss is from at Robbie Tweedale. He says, "Can the Packers trade up for CD Lamb?" What do you guys think?
I mean, CeeDee Lamb is my number one wide receiver this year. I just the capital that would have to be put down in order to trade up, because I do think teams that are picking at the high teens, or I'm sorry, the low teens, the Jets at 11, Raiders at 12, 49ers at 13. I don't think CeeDee Lamb is making it past those three teams. In order to trade up from 30 to 12, that's going to cost maybe even a next year first round pick or a couple seconds, like this year's second and next year's second. I don't think the Packers are in a position right now as a team. I feel like there are bigger needs. Like we still are going to have to figure out maybe a replacement tackle for next year, maybe some more help in the D line, and maybe another inside linebacker. I just don't think the Packers are at a position that we could just go all out on a receiver like CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Judy. I do think CeeDee Lamb is pretty. I don't know if I want to call him a generational talent, but he is. I do think he is one of the best receivers to come out of college in a couple years. So I just don't think it's worth it for the Packers. I think we got to save our picks, and even if we don't get a receiver in the first round, we can pick from a position that we need in the first round and pick one in the second. That's how deep this class is. So I don't see a need to trade up in this particular draft.
Yeah, I agree. I have CD Lamb at my number 2 spot, right behind Jerry Judy, and Ruggs are all kind of projected to go in the same area of the draft. But I agree with all the things you said, Mason. I don't think we're in the position to be able to trade future draft capital to move up for one of these guys, especially when the talent drop off isn't that big, especially compared to other years at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It would take a lot to give up uh, to get a premium first round pick that to move from 30 to a pick like you said in the low teens. That would take up a lot of other draft picks, possibly even draft picks at a premium next year. So, but yeah, I mean, concerning CD Lamb, I mean, he's probably my favorite wide receiver prospect in the last few years. He really does have everything. There's not really a flaw to his game, and I compare him to Julio Jones just based on his skill set and another popular comparison is DeAndre Hopkins, but I think he has that more big playability than that Julio Jones has. But yeah, I'm excited about him as a prospect, but I think he's really just out of our range, even in a trade up situation.
Like he would be nuts in the Green Bay offense, but I just we need those picks. We can't be going all out right now. We still have a lot of holes.
Yeah, you look at the free agents for next year too. We have so many guys to kind of keep under contract. So we're going to have a lot of holes on this team, more than we already do in the next couple years. We can't afford to be blowing all of them on a guy like CeeDee Lamb, even though he is fantastic. Same with Jerry Jeudy, same with Henry Ruggs. I just don't think it's worth it when you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and Devontae Adams on the outside. We're not looking for a wide receiver one. It's not like we have no talent. We have Devontae Adams. So I don't think it's worth trading that much that it would take to trade up into the teens for CeeDee Lamb when we'd be just fine with a wide receiver too. One of the guys like Jalen Rieger or Justin Jefferson, one of those guys, we'd be just fine with who we can maybe get at 30. So I don't see that happening.
All right, so let's move on to the next question here, and it kind of ties into these top receivers. This question's from Slater7884. He says, "How big of a difference between the top three and next three wide receivers?" So that's a good question. I mean, obviously, the consensus top three among most scouts and a lot of the experts is CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs. And then after that, the guys that come to mind are Justin Jefferson, Denzel Mims, T. Higgins, guys like that. So I don't know. What do you guys think about the separation between those top three and then the remainder of the class?
I think there's definitely a drop off from Ruggs to guys like Jefferson, guys like you said. But compared to other years, it's not that significant. Compared to other positions, even in this year's draft, it's not that significant. You look at like offensive tackle, that's a huge drop off from the top three, top two guys. Wide receiver, there's so much talent. And like we said, there's a lot of guys who are going to go on day two of the draft who would probably be going on day one in other years. So I don't think there is a drop off from Henry Ruggs, CeeDee Lamb, and Jerry Jeudy because those guys are, they're going to be making all pro teams pretty early on in their careers. But I don't think it's significant enough to trade up or anything like that. I think we'll be just fine with one of the guys who we're probably going to get at 30.
There are so many guys we could take at 30 that I don't think anybody should be mad at. Like if Justin Jefferson were to fall, he's kind of everybody's fourth or fifth guy. Jalen Rieger and Denzel Mims have been pretty much like everybody on Twitter's favorite two guys that could fall in the second round even. Either of those guys at 30 wouldn't be bad at all. I just think those two aren't as polished as, a guy like CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, that's the reason why those guys are being projected to go so high in the first round. But like this class is just loaded, as we have already said. Like you can even go deeper. You could hear about guys like Brandon Ayuk and KJ Hamler, Laviska Shenault. All those guys are in play at 30 and even if they don't go in the first round, those guys are going to be picked on an early day two. So the Packers have a bunch of options. If they don't like a guy at 30 at that pick, they can even trade back. There's always that conversation.
So is it the same for you guys as my top three? My top three is CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs. Do you guys have that same top three?
I have Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs. I just think Judy's a little bit better of a player than CeeDee.
I think he's definitely better in terms of getting separation against most coverages and most even some of the top cornerbacks in college football. My concern with him is just his hands mostly. I think he had some bad drops that I think he can easily clean up at the next level. But I think for me, CeeDee Lamb is the more safe pick. But then again, I do love them both. I have for a pro comparison for Jeudy, I actually have Antonio Brown, just based on both of their separation abilities.
Yeah, my third guy's a little bit different. I do have CeeDee Lamb at one. When I was watching the tape, I saw a lot of DeAndre Hopkins and Julio Jones, just like you said, Bron. I think his frame and his catching is like D Hop, but he's got a little more shape than D Hop does, like kind of like a Julio Jones. And I just feel like he could eventually be an all pro type receiver like Julio is. And then I got Jeudy at two. I kind of see he reminds me of a couple other wide receivers that have come out of Alabama, like Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley. Just that type of receiver, a little bit small for my liking, but he's got an insane after the catch ability that's second to none. Honestly, you've definitely seen on Instagram those juke moves that he's made. He's definitely going to be going in the teens. But my third guy is T. Higgins. When I was watching the tape, he just screamed AJ Green to me. He's 6'4", 216. He's pretty lean, but he's just got a huge frame, great hands. He caught a bunch of touchdowns. I'm pretty sure he caught 20% of his catches were touchdowns when he was at
Yeah.
Clemson. Yeah, he's just my third guy just because I could just see him being a monster for Aaron Rodgers. 6'4", and he's talented. He didn't get to run the 40 at the combine, but he plays very fast. He's able to get separation from corners, and obviously playing at Clemson, he played against some good competition. That's just why I have him at 3. I think he would fit the Packers offense a little more better than Henry Ruggs, who's normally everybody else's third guy. I just like the size, 6'4", 216, and it just, trust me, watching the film, he looks like he could be an AJ Green type player.
Yeah, that's a guy that I could definitely see, especially the Packers front office who loves those athletic big guys. Like, I think that's a guy that we could definitely fall in love in the draft if he falls to 30. I think that's definitely an option, and I see where you put him at 3. He really has everything athletically, and he's just physically gifted overall. Uh, and so, what do you guys think about Henry Ruggs though? Do you guys think he's worthy of that third spot? Like, based on what you project him to do or what he has done in college. For me, I think he's got like the physical traits that could make a great NFL wide receiver, but he does lack that production. I think his upside is like Tyreek Hill because of that electric speed. But what do you guys think?
Well, he was playing with Jerry Judy, so I mean, I think that kind of makes up for his lack of production. But yeah, I agree with the Tyreek Hill comparison, and it's kind of the comparison you don't want to make because Tyreek Hill is a unique player. There's no one really like him, but Henry Ruggs is pretty close to him. He's got that rare speed that you don't see very often in a lot of drafts, and the ability to pull coverages his way and distract the entire defense, make him focus on Henry Ruggs, make the defense focus on Henry Ruggs, even when he had Jerry Judy on the same field as him. That's pretty rare, and he creates separation consistently, and that's something I don't see a lot of in T Higgins. And if you gave me the choice of a guy who can make crazy acrobatic catches or the guy who's open constantly, I'm taking the guy who's open, especially for the Packers because Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw jump balls. We know that. He's never been a guy who's going to throw a 50-50 ball. We saw that with Jimmy Graham. Both years Jimmy Graham was in Green Bay, we're like, oh, going to be the red zone weapon. Rodgers is going to throw him lob passes, and it never happens because Rodgers is very much a safe quarterback, sometimes to his detriment, but he's always been like that. When he was winning MVPs, he was very much a safe, conservative quarterback. So I don't really see the fit with T. Higgins or other guys like Laviska Shenault or Denzel Mims. Um, I don't, and we have a lot of big bodies in the receiver room already. We have Alan Lazard, Jake Kumro, some of these not very fast guys don't create consistent separation with good hands. And I think Henry Ruggs would really change the game for Green Bay. And Henry Ruggs probably isn't going to be there at 30. There's almost no chance. But if he does fall, I think that would be a home run pick for the Packers. Easiest pick of the night. It's probably not going to happen, but he would be incredible across from Devontae Adams.
Well, if there's one of those guys, one of those top 3, if one of those guys was going to fall, it'd probably be Henry Ruggs, just based on, like you said, that lack of production. That was mostly due to the fact that Jerry Judy was on the other side of him. But still, teams could maybe hesitate based on the fact that there's so many other receivers in this class that they might want to get another position in need. So that could be a guy that could fall, maybe to like around the 18, 19, 20 range. And if the Packers really love him that much, they might go and get him. That's another guy with the physical traits and the upside that they might love so much that they'd be willing to trade up and get him. Similar to Darnell Savage last year, who we traded up for to eventually get. But I think that's definitely a scenario that is not unrealistic for sure.
All right, Bron, you got the next question?
Yeah, I do. So this one comes from Peyton_Kovash. She says, is Justin Jefferson a realistic prospect for the Packers? So in my opinion, he's a guy that probably is most likely going to get taken in around the 20s. That's another guy we could trade up for. In terms of the guys that we would have to go up and get, it's really that top three that we talked about and Justin Jefferson. Anybody else, I could see falling to 30, and I would consider taking those guys. But in terms of guys that we would have to go up and get, I think Justin Jefferson is one of them. There's not many scenarios, especially here's the thing: the Vikings have 2 picks before us. I think if he's there before 22 and 25, which is the Vikings pick, I would struggle to see them not taking him with one of those 2 picks. So we would have to probably jump them. We'd probably have to jump the Philadelphia Eagles as well at 21. So we'd probably have to get to 20 if we wanted to take him. So I'm not sure how that would work in terms of that, but obviously he's a pure slot guy, but he can play the outside. But his game is made for the slot, and I think he would fit the Packers offense really well. But what do you guys think?
He's a guy who, if he is there at 30, that's another home run pick for me for the Packers. I have him and Ruggs very closely ranked. I have Ruggs at 3, Jefferson at 4, and just like I said with Ruggs, I think we need some of that speed, some of that precise route running in the receiver room because we don't have a lot of that outside of Devontae Adams. And he's got a great release. He's got great hands. He is a primary slot receiver. He played 81% of his snaps in the slot in 2019. But I don't think that's an issue because we don't have a slot receiver right now. We tried with Geronimo Allison, didn't work out. I don't know who we're going to try now in the slot for those 3 wide receiver sets. So I think I'm okay with taking a primary slot receiver, someone who can only play in the slot. Not that Jefferson can only play in the slot because he's a weapon everywhere on the field. LSU used him in the backfield a lot of snaps, actually. So that's something that I could see Matt LaFleur getting creative with, and I think he'd be a great weapon for Aaron Rodgers in the Packers offense.
Yeah, pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Watching his tape, when he was in the slot, I thought that was where he was best. And, his 40 time reflects how fast he is, 4.43. I think that type of speed mixed with his height at 6'1", I think that's pretty much exactly what the Packers offense needs. We sign in Devin Funchess, bringing back Alan Lazard. There are options to be that wide receiver too, outside of Devontae Adams. But at the same time, we do need somebody in the slot when Devontae Adams isn't in the slot, and someone that can, change a pace. Like you said, Geronimo didn't work. MVS hasn't really been working. I just think Justin Jefferson is a unique prospect. And I think not being the number 1 or number 2 guy in an offense will really help him grow as a player too. Because that LSU team was pretty loaded. So I just think he still needs a couple more years though to really come into his full potential, and just playing in a offense with Aaron Rodgers and learning from guys like Devontae and Devin Funchess, and just being able to practice in the slot. I think that'd be perfect for the Packers offense.
He's tough too. You see him catching traffic is amazing. He's not the slot receiver who's going to get knocked around in the slot or in the middle of the field. He's going to put his shoulder down and fight for extra yards on every play. And that's something that I think is missing a little bit in the Packers offense.
Yeah, I think really overall, he's like that slot receiver mold that of today's NFL with his size at 6'1", and his skill set overall. I just think he kind of is exactly what teams like the Eagles, like the Vikings, and the Packers are looking for in terms of that slot receiver. But my next question comes from Lambeau Chronicles: Jefferson, Mims, or Rager. So those are 3 of the kind of the middle of the pack in terms of the first round talent guys. How do you guys have those 3 ranked in your rankings?
For me, I do have Jefferson as my out of those 2 guys. He's my number 1. I think he has the most potential out of all those 3, and just watching him in LSU, I think he was terrific in the slot, like I just said earlier. And I think I'm speaking on fitting in the Packers offense. I think he does fit the best what we need right now, and I do think he still has a lot of room to grow. My second guy out of those 3 would be Rieger. His tape is crazy. Out of all 3 of those guys, his tape was the craziest. Just contested catches. He's got deadly speed. He could take any ball to the house. And he's great after the catch too. And he actually returned kicks at TCU. So he's got that upside as well. He's a little bit small. He's 5'10". I could definitely see him playing in the slot for us as well. But He's fast, 4.47 40 at the combine. But then we go to Mims. Mims is my third guy. He's blazing fast. 4.38 at 6'3" is super quick. And I don't know. It was a really toss up between him and Rieger. Watching his film, he was fantastic at catching back shoulder throws, which was obviously a big Aaron Rodgers thing. Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, always connected on those. He's super physical, solid in the run blocking, and yeah, when I compared Denzel Mims to Kenny Galladay. I don't know what you guys thought. I just thought the size 6'3" and the speed 4.38 was just pretty crazy.
I have Jefferson at 4 and then Rieger at 5 actually, and Rieger's just uh, he has some of everything in him. He's explosive off the line of scrimmage. He's great at contested catches. He's got blazing fast speed, like you said, and he would be another real weapon for the Packers offense. Mims, I'm not as high on because, as I said earlier, I'm not a fan of the big body guys. It's not very often that the big body wide receivers are at the top of the league in terms of wide receiver rankings. And for Aaron Rodgers too, I don't think he likes the big body guys very much. His best receivers have always been the better route runners, the better, more elusive guys, the quicker guys, rather than big body targets. So I'm not very high on Mims, but Rieger I do love, and he's just a smidgen below Jefferson for me.
And for me, my rankings, these are actually my 4, 5, and 6 guys in my overall rankings. For me, Mims comes in at the top, and it's basically because of his physical skill set. He's just a freak. Like his speed with his size, it's insane. I think he's got a lot of upside with proper coaching. If he can get some route running, just get better at that, kind of clean that up, polish some of the other skill sets that he has. I see a lot of upside in him, and I know it's not exactly what we need, but his overall talent to me is better than these other guys. Although it's like splitting hairs with these prospects are all so good. Like I would have no problem getting either any of these guys. I'd have no problem drafting. But then for me, I have Justin Jefferson. Uh, he like we talked about, he's just incredible. I mean, he's my favorite thing about him is his patience. In terms of just how he's able to read coverages, and he's going to have to work on that at this next level in the different forms of defense and things like that. But I do think he has excellent patience that he uses to kind of load up his speed and agility and quickness and kind of burst out into a route, which I think that can be useful at times. Uh, but one negative I have on him is that he does struggle against man coverage and sometimes press against stronger and bigger cornerbacks, and but that is at the college level. So he's often going to go up against more safety style players rather than like these top cornerbacks that college teams love to place on the other team's best receiver. So that's the only concern I have, but I'm not sure it'll translate to the NFL based on just the way things go. And
Yeah, and in the slot, you're not going to see a lot of press coverage, anyways.
Exactly right. He's going to have a lot more room to work. So that's one of the things that it's a concern based on just his overall ability. But in terms of the NFL game, I don't think it's going to be that much of a big deal.
I
And then
agree.
for Jalen Rager, he's a guy that I love, and he might be my favorite option for us sticking at 30. But I do love him. And here's the story with him. So he at the combine ran a 4.47, and that disappointed a lot of teams and himself. But what he wanted to do was he wanted to come in at a bigger weight to try to not scare teams away by his size alone. And that kind of messed up his 40 time. So he ran a 4.47. And then a couple teams had him run his own pro day during this quarantine situation. So he recorded a pro day, and he had two people time him on a 40. He weighed in at 206 at the combine, and then weighed in at 197 at this pro day style workout. And he ended up running one person had it at a 4.22, and the other had it at a 4.28. That's blazing fast, and that's what I expected at the combine. So in terms of his upside, I think it's there. He does have some hands issues. I think his main positive for me is how explosive he is. He's just got pure explosiveness on every route. Everything after the catch is just pure explosiveness. But the size is a concern in terms of if he wants to increase his size. I'm concerned about that the way that'll contrast with his speed and his agility and quickness. So that's going to have to be something that's sorted out by the strength and conditioning coaches of whichever team he goes to. But yeah, I love all three of these guys. And another thing on Mims, I just wanted to mention an interesting point that I want you guys to also comment on. Uh, Denzel Mims, for me, he's so physical. He's got this. He's just a physical freak, like I talked about. And when he's playing with corners, sometimes the way he gets separation, I feel like is a lot of extending the arm, a lot of using his body to separate from guys. Now, at the NFL level, where he kind of, where he's going to be able to do that, I feel like that could be called OPI a little more often than it would be at that college level. So that's a little concerning for me. He's good at using his body in a way where a lot of times they can't call it, but in other cases, I feel like that could become an issue. And if that's really the way he's been getting separation, which I saw on tape most of his college career, I am worried about the fact that if he's not able to do that at the NFL level, if they're flagging him every time for it, then he might not be able to get the same separation that he was getting at the college level. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's my biggest issue with Mims. Really, is his lack of separation, and he is really physical. But again, the potential for offensive pass interference could be an issue in the NFL. I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. I mean, we see guys get handsy, receivers versus corners. They always get handsy, and the refs they're not going to call that every single time. So I don't think it's going to be like a major issue throughout his career, especially with the NFL coaches. They know what's going to be a penalty and what's not going to be a penalty. They're going to teach him how to create separation physically without doing the whole extending the arm, pushing off. But I don't know how well he's going to do in the NFL because I think you have to be able to create separation as a receiver to be a number one receiver, even a number two receiver, to be a consistent starter. You have to be able to create separation, and that's not something I see a lot of from Mims.
Yeah, Griff, I agree with you, but at 6'3", running a sub 4.40, I just feel like you said, an NFL coach could hopefully teach him not to, swipe a defender's hand away and stop being so pushy. Because I did see when he was running reps at the Senior Bowl, he was super physical with his corner. And I definitely do think he was pushing off, and especially at the line, just feel like he was pushing off right away. Like I just hope if we do draft him, somebody can tell him like, yo, that's gonna get called in the NFL. But I just think he's a physical freak. I think he's buff, tall, fast. I just think you can't teach size, can't teach speed, but you could teach something like that. Just I feel like it could be worth a chance.
Yeah, I think that's a guy that you could polish him up and kind of refine his game to the NFL level. That's really what all this is about. It's not about what you did at the college level. It's about what you're projecting them to do at the NFL level. And in this particular case, this is definitely something you could look at and say, okay, we're going to get in here and we're going to get this guy using his physical abilities and we're going to refine his game at the NFL level and make him into a star. So there's definitely teams that are going to be able to at least believe that they can kind of coach this guy to be able to get separation without getting too handsy to the point where they're going to start calling it. But we're going to move on to the next question here. All right, this question comes from Krigo. He says, thoughts on Brandon Ayuk in the first round or thoughts on Laviska Shenault in the first round? So these are guys that are kind of towards, I know you guys have him in different areas, but for me, he is at, Brandon Ayuk for me is at number 8, and then Laviska Shenault I have at number 10. So in terms of the first round and number 30, I would particularly avoid drafting either of them at 30. I would prefer trading down if we didn't like anybody and then gaining some more picks and getting them in the early 40s maybe. So that's my thoughts on the two guys.
Yeah, I have Ayuk at number 7 and Chenault at number 9. Chenault is the same thing as T. Higgins, same thing as Denzel Mims. I don't like these big body receivers who can't consistently create separation, especially against college corners. I mean, that competition is only going to get tougher in the NFL. You're only going to get played by better corners who maybe will break up some of these jump balls that college corners weren't able to because there's such a talent drop off in the college game, and you're going against a lot better corners who are going to stop some of those jump balls. But Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State, I absolutely love. I think he's just like Jalen Rieger. He's just like Justin Jefferson for us. A nice throw in of speed, something the Packers do not have right now on the offense, other than MVS, who has a lot of other areas to clean up in his game right now. Ayuk, I think he's amazing, and I'd totally be okay with taking him at 30. Honestly, I've him ranked as the number 7th receiver in the draft. He's a fantastic route runner. He's got great hands. You don't see a lot of drops from him, and I think he could be a deep threat. He could be a threat over the middle. He can be a short route threat. Take it to the house. He's just everything I want. Just like Jalen Rieger, he's everything I want for the Packers in a receiver.
Yeah, for me, like, I think both of them have injury concerns that kind of scare me. I know Ayuk had a core injury, and Laviska Shenault has had injuries the past 2 years. I'm not sure what they were, but he's been injured. And for me, I feel like Ayuk, he's just like he's great after the catch, but I feel like he lacks the physicality of some of these other guys. Like even Rager has, I feel like he is much more physical with corners, and I just that's what kind of separates those two guys. And then for Laviska Shenault, my thing is that I think his size is like average. He's versatile. That's his big thing. But I feel like he's a doer of all and a master of none. I think they have him coming out of the backfield running wildcat, jet sweeps, but he's not a great enough receiver for me to the point where we're really going to get much use out of him. I know Mason had a perfect comparison for him if you want to get into that, Mason, but I definitely both of those guys are options if we kind of trade back and look for a receiver, but I do think that I would not pick those guys at 30.
Yeah, I do like my comparison for Chenault. I do think it's perfect, but I have Ayuk at 8. I have Ayuk. I like to have him, Rieger, and Mims all in the same type of category. I do think all those guys are in play at 30, pretty similar. But for Laviska Shenault, I have him at 10. My comparison for him is Cordero Patterson. I think the dude's built like a running back, and as we all know, Cordero Patterson he beat us up with the Patriots on the ground. He was with the Bears last year, primarily a kick returner. Got drafted in the first round by the Vikings. He's got the same build as Laviska. I think Laviska he's not. I just can see him having a Cordero Patterson like career. Just he's not going to work out as a wide receiver. He really didn't grow as a route runner. He balled out in 2018, but in 2019 he got hurt. But still, when he was playing, there was not much growth as a wide receiver. Route running is a big concern for him. But the dude's a physical monster. He's obviously, I said, like, he's built. He looks like a running back after the catch. He likes to lower the shoulder. Great with contested catches, but at the same time, like, he's not fundamentally sound as a wide receiver. That is the one thing that scares me. If, like, I don't know what his college coaches were doing. Like, why couldn't he turn into like a sound wide receiver? He just kind of uses his physical traits as and his athletic ability to get in places. That's pretty much what I saw from Laviska Shenault. But Brandon Ayuk is a super interesting. I actually really like him. I wish I could put him higher than 8, but I do think Mims and Rieger are a little bit higher than him, but still the same category. Ayuk's tape kind of jumped out to me. I don't know if you guys saw the same thing. Just after the catch, I just think the dude finds open spaces like it's nothing, and it's just like he's returning kicks. He returned kicks at ASU, and all the games I saw, he had some crazy returns. He's got a lot of upside in the return game and a lot of upside in the screen game as well. They threw a lot of screens to him, just hoping he can break one loose. And I did see a couple where he did. That's just what I saw out of him. I could see him being a Robert Woods type player, just a little bit lanky. He's 6'1", and I definitely could see him being a solid player if the Packers do see potential at him in 30.
Yeah, Ayuk is great after the catch. He actually averaged 11 yards after the catch per reception, which is just insane. A lot of those are from screens, but that's something that the Packers don't have. And Ayuk is kind of the opposite of Chenault, where Bron, you said he's not very physical, and I agree with that. He's not great versus press coverage, whereas Chenault is wins with his physicality. That's pretty much his only way of winning. Whereas Ayuk wins with his route running. And if you give me the option of Chenault, who wins with physicality, or Ayuk, who wins with route running and ability to create separation off of it, I'm definitely taking Ayuk there.
Yeah, I agree. For the Packers specifically, we could use a guy that can create separation just based on his route running alone. And one last note on LaVisca, I agree, Mason. He when you talk about what were the college coaches doing while he's not progressing as a wide receiver fundamentally, they're training him to become a running back and a wildcat quarterback and running jet sweeps. Like they're not refining his talent as a wide receiver, and that might have hurt him as a prospect overall. His versatility isn't enough to uh, kind of seal the deal for teams when he's just not as pure of a receiver as you'd like. But with that, we're going to move on to the next question here. Question is from JTDE Clark. He says, "Who could be a quality pick in the later rounds that could add some speed to Green Bay's offense?"
One guy for me who I do definitely think would be there at the second round pick for us, I believe that's pick 60. It would be KJ Hamler from Penn State. He's a super small guy, 5'9", 178. He plays like a mix of Brandon Cooks and Hollywood Brown. Super fast. I wish he could have ran the 40 at the combine, but he wasn't able to. He's so explosive and he's compact and he takes hits and he likes contact. He watching his tape, like he's super physical for a small guy. Obviously the negatives for him would be the size. Smaller receivers are always I don't want to discriminate against small receivers, but not a lot of them work out in the NFL. Thinking about like Tavon Austin, he was super small, didn't really work out. But KJ Hamler is a guy who could have a career like Tyreek Hill, picked in super late, like 6th round. I don't know where KJ Hamler is going to fall. My guess is the 2nd or 3rd round, but he is a type of guy that could have could make an instant impact in Green Bay's offense. I just don't know if the Packers would be interested in a smaller guy. 5'9" isn't usually the prototype for Packer wide receivers.
Yeah, he kind of defies the mold that they've had in terms of receivers and corners. He's 5'9" on a good day. Like that's tough. I mean, he does show it. He has extreme burst in the slot. He's aggressive. He's physical. But I feel like every time I watch him on tape, he gets hit hard and he's down on the ground and he has to come out for a couple plays. That's concerning for his long-term health. With some of these big hitters at the next level, I don't know how attractive that is for a lot of teams, but I do like him as like a 3rd, 4th round pick option, a day 2 option, and I think he'll go day 2, like you said. A guy for me, in terms of not just speed, but he's a complete wide receiver for me. Is Bryan Edwards. He's a guy that people haven't talked too much about, but I have him ranked number 11. He's got a lot of Devontae Parker in him. I think he's a very complete wide receiver. I think he might be the most physical of anybody in this draft. He's got so much strength and toughness after the catch. When he rarely gets tackled with the first guy, even the second guy. He's able to escape a lot of that just with strength and toughness alone. But he, like I said, he's just a complete wide receiver. The only thing I think he can improve on is jump balls. He's great at everything, but his 50-50 ball game, it's not the best, and that's something that he could improve on. But he's a guy I'd love to target. Even if we draft a receiver in the 1st round, he'd be a guy I'd love to target in the 3rd or 4th round.
I agree with Mason on this one. KJ Hamler, I absolutely love. I have him ranked 10th of all the receivers in this draft. He is an exclusively slot player, very small frame, which you don't like to see, especially the Packers. That's, like you said, Bron, that's against their mold that they've set for receivers that they draft. But I think he could really be a game changer for this offense. As I've said 100 times so far, we don't have speed on the offense. Outside of Devontae Adams, we don't have precise route running, and KJ Hamler is exactly that. And he is small, but he's like, Bron, you described him as a little pinball out there. Like he's taking hits. He's so aggressive. He's very tough. So I'm not really concerned for his long term health. He hasn't had any major injuries throughout his collegiate career. I think he would be a great number 3 option for the Packers right now. And I see him as a guy who on third down, Rodgers is going to go on 3rd and 8 in the fourth quarter. Rodgers can go to him because he can trust him to get open because he's open all the time. And he's great at tracking the ball downfield. He's a deep threat and an intermediate threat, which is rare for a lot of slot receivers. And something I noticed while watching him on film is every pass looked like an accurate pass because of how well he could track the ball. Even on a little wonky throws, he was always in the right spot. He tracks the ball so well, and he's not big enough to make any kind of contested catches. But I don't think that's what whatever team he goes to is going to use him as. Because I mean, he's 5'8", 5'9". You're going to use him how he should be used, how he was used at Penn State, and he was awesome at Penn State. So I think he would be great for the Packers as a slot receiver, as a reliable slot receiver, someone who's always open, which the Packers do not have right now.
Yeah, definitely. I do think he'd be a nice pick. And another guy I want to talk about is he's one of my trade down from 30 targets. That's my number 9 receiver, Michael Pittman. He to me he comes on as super strong. He's got great size, but and he uses size just he uses it for his catching ability, and he also uses it to block really well in both the run and pass game. But the one thing that has been a criticism of him and is why he's not amongst that top 7 guys in the receiver class is that he lacks the quickness downfield to be like a deep threat and a truly complete wide receiver. What do you guys think of him overall?
Yeah, watching Pittman, I drew two pro player comparisons. I thought Alan Lazard right away, just because we're all super familiar with how Alan Lazard plays. Big body, goes up for the catch, but isn't that super fast guy and isn't that super shifty guy. And also he's got the upside to be like a Cortland Sutton type player too. He ran a 4.52 at 6'4", 223. That isn't that slow. That's pretty good speed for a guy that big. And another pro for him, I saw he blocked a couple punts in college too. He's got good if he doesn't play right away for the Packers, if the Packers pick him, if he falls to round 3, say, or I'm thinking he's more of a round 2 type player. He can make an instant impact on special teams right away, and yeah, I do think that's a valuable pick if he does fall to 60.
Yeah, like I think what people criticize his speed for, obviously he had that decent time, especially for his size. It was a great time, but a lot of people think it doesn't show up on tape, and I kind of agree with that. I have to see more of him, but I do think he'd be a really nice option. I compare him to, I think a high end like comparison and a pro comparison for him would be Mike Evans. I think he's got that athleticism and that size to go up and make contested catches, get downfield. I see his ability to get downfield. I just want to see it more on tape. I see it. I see his physical traits allowing that to happen. I do want to see it more on tape though, and I think that could happen in the Green Bay offense as like a big kind of deep threat that can make contested catches. That's why I think Mike Evans is a good upside comparison for him. All right, our next question comes from Real Pack Talk. He says, "How late can we draft a wide receiver and still be comfortable with it?" There's lots of talk of other positions at the moment. So yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in terms of your guys' thoughts on it, we've been linked to quarterbacks, we've been linked to offensive tackles, linebackers, defensive tackles. There's a lot of different positions up for that first pick in the first round. What do you guys think is the latest we can go with a receiver and you'll still feel comfortable with the guy we get?
I mean, I I want a receiver who's going to make an immediate impact in his rookie season and in his second year because I don't want another MVS. I don't want another Jamon Moore. I don't want a project player. And so in terms of who's going to make an immediate impact, probably third round is the latest I'd go. Actually, second round. If we don't draft a receiver in the first 2 rounds, I would be pretty uncomfortable. And we're acting like, so far we've been assuming that the Packers are going to take a receiver at 30, but like you said, Bron, we've been linked to a lot of different positions. That's not really a guarantee at this point. And the Packers always say that their method is best player available, but I feel like this year more than any other year, we're kind of locked in at wide receiver because it's such a hole. We didn't do anything major there in free agency, other than a low risk signing with Devin Funchess. So I think there's a real need for that. And um, yeah, I think second round is the latest that I'd feel comfortable with.
100% agree with you, Griff. I feel like even if we wait for 60 to pick a wide receiver, I feel like our top 10 guys are going to be all gone. I think Ayuk would be gone, Mims will be gone, Rigger will be gone. Those are the type of guys we're looking at possibly picking at 30. But there are teams that that don't have first round picks, like the Colts, that are probably going to take a wide receiver in that second round, and they pick before us. So it would be worrisome if we don't take one at 30, but there's scenarios where we don't. We obviously need a D tackle, and we obviously need possibly another inside linebacker, Patrick Queen or even Murray from OKU. Those are two other options. And yeah, I'm just, we might have to trade up from 60, honestly, if we do want to lock up an Ayuk or a Mims or a Rieger. Those are the three guys that I feel like are going to get picked on day 2 if they don't go day 1, and probably early day 2. And those are guys, like you said, Griff, that would be able to make an impact right away. And that's what we're all looking for. We do need an impact guy right away, day 1.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. For me, and this is going to sound kind of rash, but I'd have trouble even picking one if we stayed at the number, I think we're number 62 in the second round. I'd have trouble staying there and picking a receiver depending on who's left. I think we'd have to trade up from that spot and go get a guy because it's important to get someone that we know can contribute right away. I think, it's very, very possible that a guy like T. Higgins, a guy like Jalen Reagor, Brandon Ayuk, there's going to be a couple guys that are going to fall into the second round just because there's so many talented players. I don't want to end up having to choose between, guys that we don't really want to throw out there right away to compete for the number 2 spot. I want to get a guy that will definitely come in, have a shot at that job. And I want to have, day 1 competition right away to get reps. And I want to have a receiving core like the one we've had in our winning seasons. Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings. We need that to be in contention again. We got to give Rodgers the weapons that he deserves, the ones that we need to win a Super Bowl. And I think it's a position that we have to make sure we have addressed, ready for injury, ready for whatever happens. We need enough guys to come in and contribute right away. So that's definitely a position of need for me. And the other position, it doesn't matter if we take another one in round 1, but it's got to happen in round 2, and it's got to happen early.
And that was the last question we have prepared for today. So before we end this real quick, we're just going to do a recap of our wide receiver rankings 1 through 10. I'll start 1, Jerry Jeudy, 2, CeeDee Lamb, 3, Henry Ruggs, 4, Justin Jefferson, 5, Jalen Reagor, 6, T. Higgins, 7, Brandon Ayuk, 8, Denzel Mims, 9, Laviska Shenault, and 10, KJ Hamler.
And for me, my rankings go, I got 1, CeeDee Lamb, 2, Jerry Jeudy, 3, Henry Ruggs, 4, Denzel Mims, 5, Justin Jefferson, 6, Jalen Reagor, 7, T. Higgins, 8, Brandon Ayuk, 9, Michael Pittman, and 10, Laviska Shenault.
And for me, I got CeeDee Lamb at 1, Jerry Jeudy at 2, T. Higgins way higher than everybody else at 3, Henry Ruggs at 4, Justin Jefferson at 5, and then the guys that are kind of in play at us at 30, Jalen Reagor at 6, Denzel Mims at 7, Brandon Ayuk at 8, KJ Hamler at 9, and Laviska Shenault at 10.
So we all have kind of pretty similar top 10 lists. A few Bron, I think your list is the most different from me and Mason. Me and Mason have pretty similar lists, actually. Yeah, that's fun. This is a great class. I mean, even as long as we take a receiver at 30, I don't think I'll be disappointed unless it's Denzel Mims.
Wow, the Denzel Mims, really? Not
I don't like him. I don't like him. I mean,
Well,
I'm sure once we picked him.
That's one area where me and Mason agree that we'd both have no problem with the Packers taking him at 30.
Yeah, I mean, if we did take him, I'm a Packer fan, and I'd convince myself this is going to work out, just like I kind of did for the Rashawn Gary pick. I wasn't very high on him last year, but no matter who they take, it's going to be very interesting because we haven't taken a receiver this early in a lot of years. Who was the last one? Devontae Adams, I think. That was second round.
Yeah,
Uh,
2014.
Last
yeah,
first rounder was Javon Walker.
yeah, that's insane. So this is foreign territory for the Packers taking a receiver this early. They have been just golden in the second round with their receivers. So, but I don't think they're gonna be superstitious and think we can just take one in the second round. But maybe they have their eye on someone who we didn't even mention today. That could happen. They do that a lot. But as for the podcast, that's going to do it for this episode of the Today in Titletown Packers podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe on all platforms, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. For me, All Day Packers on Instagram and Twitter, Bron at Lambo Leapers on Instagram, and Mason at Packer Post on Instagram and Twitter. That's going to do it. We'll be back soon with another draft episode, so stay tuned for that, and go Pack Go.